Blessings, everyone. Today I would like to share an oracle reading by the Work Your Light Oracle. And this is such a fascinating oracle deck because it works with the light beings, but there are many different versions of this. And many of us, when we think of the light, we think of the ascended masters, of the angelic realms. But there are angels and light beings from different galaxies that are star seeds, that are ancient energies from far beyond what we have the concept of time. And all this is imprinted in each of us. And so when the words are used, light beings, or the unseen world, or even spirit, I'm inviting all of the people that are watching, all of the souls watching this video, to expand that a little bit. Not to narrow our idea of what is a light being. When I'm doing these readings and I'm bringing through the different energies, I don't even feel some of the oracle cards represent the angelic realms as male or female energies. And I have to admit that when I'm experiencing this, all I'm hearing are octaves of light. I'm experiencing different octaves that present as light. And it's very hard to identify what our concept is of gender or even a name. The angels never come to me with a sense of what we call a name. And so finding this oracle has been interesting because a lot of the messages on this oracle are just bringing through kind of the resonance of it's a broad spectrum. That when we're speaking to all the unseen worlds, that's what we mean, is that there could be angels that are from different frequencies and galaxies. There may be some that are from different planets that are ascended masters. So it's not just spiritual in the sense of we have our saints, we have our angels, we have our guides, but also that it's an infinite energy, an infinite light. The universe is just as vast as it is our imagination. And so that with this one, I'm saying this beforehand because I'm not going to give this a specific, I'm not saying that I'm speaking with spirit per se. And I'm not going to just channel the galactic families or our ancestors or loved ones, guides, angels. This is just all of that energy, all of that beautiful resonance of light. And first, I would like to say thank you to Source for allowing me to be a medium of light. And I ask all of the light beings in this beautiful universe, and the universe is beyond this one, worlds within worlds, any expression of light, to please step forward and help bring a message of the highest good. Thank you. I'm grateful. And first I would like to, I always shuffle. Source alignment is the first energy. The second shuffle represents spirit, all of the unseen worlds, in this case, light. And the third represents the soul, which is a small fragment of the vast and infinite that we all are connected with. But the soul is that beautiful expression, the one that carries a personality, the one that has the lessons and the blueprints, the archetypes of our experience in the physical. Then what I'm going to do is just move the cards around and they'll tell me, whoa, if it flies out, that's the one I'm taking. Boundaries. Where do you need to establish better boundaries? And as I'm listening, allowing the energies to pull forward, they're saying that when we think of boundaries, we have the concept, the ideas of these are things that we don't want, that we are not looking for in our life. When we imagine what a boundary is, we imagine things that we are not taking part in, or that we are pushing away from our energy, or that we're stepping away from. And what I'm hearing is boundaries are not just about all the things that we are not wanting, or we no longer feel useful, relationships that no longer serve. But the boundaries are also the limitations that we set on our expanding awareness. We have heard many times we can't set boundaries for others. We can only set boundaries for ourselves. And that comes a lot with our communication, our relationships, whether it's a coworker, a best friend, family member, or love interest. But Spirit and all the unseen world is asking, what boundaries are we setting on our awareness? As I mentioned before, a lot of us, when we're expressing our experience with the angelic realms, that we imagine that Archangel Michael is this beautiful angel with wings that is presenting himself as Michael as a male. Or when we think of our guides and our ascended masters, we are thinking of the Buddhas and the different versions of Mother Mary, whether it's the Sophia or Magdalene. And we think of our guides as either male or female. And in this space, they're asking us to think outside of these boundaries that we set. Perhaps what's guiding us is pureness, direct divine presence that surpasses any boundaries or limitations that we put. They're saying some of the spiritual community believes that we have our many incarnations and that we come back as a human each time. And they're asking us to step outside of these boundaries when it comes to our consciousness and our awareness. That perhaps we were not always a physical human being in each lifetime. Maybe we've experienced being an animal, a tree. They're reminding me that the beautiful soul Dolores Cannon had done many past life regressions. They're showing me the past life regression videos. And they're saying that she discovered that some people in their past lives were rocks and different forms of life before they became a human. So there are limitless, endless, infinite possibilities for the consciousness to express itself. And as we grow on our spiritual journey, we become more aware and we're touching different spaces and we're opening up to the idea that there are light beings from different galaxies that are contacting us, or perhaps we're communing with trees, the elements, different possibilities of ley lines and star formations, different angelic beings. Why are we setting boundaries on our forms of communication as well? This is a time when a boundary does not serve. It then creates a box. It creates a loop. It creates belief systems. And these are the layers of an onion. They're showing me an onion unfold. We're trying to peel away the layers so we can become directly what is. And so many times we misconstrue. There are boundaries that can serve us when we're in the human, when we're having this human experience, this beautiful earth school, especially when we're having relations with others in whatever form that may be, communications. Of course, we don't want to be abused. Of course, we don't want to feel unheard. And of course, we don't want to make others feel that way. So there are boundaries put in place so that we can live our best life. But when it comes to our consciousness and our awareness, we don't want to get into that space where we're setting boundaries on these things and saying, well, yes, I accept as a medium that I can communicate with my grandfather in spirit, but this beautiful parrot wants to come through and communicate, and that can't be possible. We don't want to set boundaries on ourselves that we start having this beautiful experience when we're picking up crystals and feeling very drawn to this, and ask ourselves, maybe we've lived in a lifetime as a Lemurian or an Atlantean, or perhaps we experienced being a crystal at some point in our conscious evolution. Maybe we can communicate in some form or another with a crystal. They're saying, allow ourselves to put boundaries up and mistake belief systems as boundaries. Because whether some feel like their spirit animal is a unicorn, that many say is a fantasy animal or a fairy tale, or when there's many cultures that believe in fire dragons and fae, that we only set boundaries up and limit ourselves to believing in angels and saints because that's what we've been taught. Everyone has a comfort zone. But part of expanding the consciousness is stepping outside of that a little bit and realizing that there are many different expressions of energy and consciousness in the vast universe. They're showing me I was watching YouTube not too long ago, and there was someone on there that was experiencing and expressing their NDE, their near-death experience, and talking about what they seen when they were in the fullness of spirit. And it was vastly different than what I experienced during my NDE and some of the other NDEs that I've listened to. And right away, I was putting up boundaries as to what someone could experience and said, wow, that couldn't be authentic because I didn't experience any of that. And Spirit stepped right in and re-guided me, redirected me through that, expanded my consciousness and said, what part of the consciousness are you trying to measure? What part of the consciousness are you putting boundaries and filters on because of experience? And so this is what they're asking us. How many times do we do that when we're really trying to get into that space where there's that fine line between what is I and what is everything? And that is different for each of us. So today's message about boundaries isn't so much about setting up boundaries that we don't fall into narcissism with others, or that we're not letting ourselves fall into a deep depression for too long, but the boundaries that we set on how far that we can be conscious, how far our awareness expands. What are we willing to accept on the spiritual journey that may or may not be a valid experience or connection with all of the unseen world? We want to be as limitless as possible. And it's very hard when we're working through the brain. The gray matter gets in the way. We understand that in order to function here, we have a left brain and a right brain. And there's psychology that goes with this, and scientific theories and all sorts of things that we've presented, studied, tried to understand, and somehow put it into a way that we can teach others. And so what Spirit is asking is that the left brain that is in charge of all of the figuring things out, the math, so to speak, they're laughing, has its place. And we're not discounting that in spirituality, because they can work together. They're speaking of the hemisync, and they're saying, and this is why when we're creating a larger consciousness, we're not just working from the right side of the brain to be creative and spiritual. What we want to do is balance. The more area of gray matter that we have found we can use and expand into, and the more we integrate navigating from the heart space, the less boundaries we're setting on all of this. So we don't want to get stuck in that ideology that's a left brain thing or a right brain thing. We want to stay in that space where we're integrating all of it, and we're understanding that all of it has its place. That we want the grand mind. We want the open mind. And that's a balance. So they're pulling their energy back. Oh, you have to excuse my cat. He likes to have his moment when I'm doing these videos sometimes, and it reminds me to keep this sense of humor, because that's another thing that Spirit taught me recently, and I'm sure a lot of us realize that sometimes we get real serious with all of this, and we want to take it serious and have that integrity when we're doing spiritual work, but sometimes Spirit will just step in there and wipe that clean, and the most bizarre things that we can imagine happen, and we have a laugh and we say, okay, well, we got to remember that there's joy in all of this too, and just the universe has a sense of humor as well. But as they pull their energy back, they've left me with this reminder that everything is balanced. I mean, even when we look at each other, for the most part, we have symmetry. And we can do this when we're integrating the physical and the spiritual worlds, when we're taking these lessons and these teachings from our guides. I'm learning. I'm sharing what I need to understand and learn by doing videos. I'm sharing it with everyone. So these messages are teaching me, and I'm honored and grateful to share this as I'm learning. And they want us to stop with the boundaries that we place on our spirituality by limiting these things to right and left brain, or the physical and the spiritual, because all of this experience is the symmetry. It's symbiosis. It's working together. And the grand plan of it is being able to infuse all of it and use all of it, and not limit ourselves to that's just a spiritual experience and that's just a physical one, or that was very left brain, or that was right brained of me, or oh, that came from the heart and that came from the mind. Because we're using all of these beautiful tools, all of these expressions, all of these sensations and these visions and all of the awareness without limits. The more boundaries we place on spiritual communication, perhaps the different things we've experienced in different lifetimes, of what we could have been or wouldn't have been, the more we learn to integrate this in and use it as a whole, the more of this beautiful consciousness becomes accessible, not just so we can hear spirit and have communications of what's the next move, or what's my purpose, or how can I be of service, but just so we experience the fullness, so we remember this fullness, so we remember the vastness, because once we've learned how to integrate that, we don't have boundaries anymore. We have possibilities. And that's a beautiful, beautiful space to be. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share this message. It's a little bit longer of a video today, and I think that's because this is a process. And I think that sometimes we want to spiritually bypass, or maybe mentally bypass certain things because we think we're not getting it, or it's overwhelming. And really, it's just trying to understand the broader spectrum of it. If it's something that we're dealing with emotionally and mentally, we can integrate other aspects like the spirituality or the psychology or the sense of humor into all of this, so that the consciousness not only can expand but can relax and enjoy the ride. Much love.